She paints history for others and found herself living inside it. This late 18th century Vermont colonial, once home to prosperous farmer Henry Gould for nearly half a century, stands in Weathersfield beneath the shadow of Mount Ascutney. Its gabled rooflines, centered chimney, and time-worn 6/6 windows define the house today, while the asymmetry of its facade still hints at its beginnings as a modest cape, gradually expanded into the larger farmhouse it became. A muralist who captures the spirit of New England towns and homes that anchor them, Lisa Curry Mair has let this house keep its age and character, even as she tends it now as its steward. Around it, a massive barn and open pastures echo the rhythms of Gould's farm, today shared with Lisa's horse, dogs, and a miniature donkey, companions that inspire her daily life and fuel her commitment to equine rescue. Let's step inside the Henry Gould house and see how Lisa has woven her art, her history, and her home into one living story.
Hello, welcome to the Henry Gould house.
Welcome to Historic Home Redux. I'm Alicia Sternbergianos, and this is Lisa Curry Mair, and she has welcomed us into her home, and we're very excited to hear about it. So what is it that you felt when you first saw the house and then when you walked in?
So when we were looking around for a house to eventually live in, we just wanted an old place, and I wanted a place that I could do my work in. And this one came up on the market, and I really thought it looked like it had promise, and my husband looked at the picture and said, ugh. And I said, well, let's just give it a chance. And we came and looked, and it was not what it looked like in the photographs, so learned that lesson. So the first step into the house, my breath was taken away. It was like, I could just see the potential, and that it had all of the old stuff that we wanted. And it hadn't been remodeled to a point that you couldn't redo it.
Right.
So.
And, you know, during our conversations a little bit before this, Elisa did share the fact with me that this wasn't where you were originally going to move, correct?
Right. We had been looking around for a couple of years, and we found a place up in northern Vermont. And I had moved myself in there completely in my head. And then it didn't work out job-wise for Bart. He got offered a job down in this area, so we had to look very quickly for something here. So it was all very dramatic.
Yeah. Well, any of us, you know, when we have that happen, we get, you know, we are emotionally already tied to that one thing. And then when it doesn't happen, it makes it difficult to sort of say, now what? So can you give us a little history of this home?
Yeah, this house has a lot of history. I don't have as much of it as I would love to have. It's a work in progress, finding it all. It was originally a cape built around 1790, and it was one of 6 or 7 right in this area, all built probably by the same people. And then we say it was modernized around 1860, 1870, when they added on the 3-story colonial over the cape. And then the carriage house and the barn were attached here, and that's been all remodeled quite a bit. And then across the street is this fantastic old barn that dates back to about the time of the cape.
The entryways have changed over the years. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so we're going to show you the doors to this house. It goes in different stages. So the first house that was built was a cape, built around 1790, and this was the front door to the cape, probably the only door to the cape. It had 2 windows on either side of the door. And then around 1870, 1860, this part of the house was built up over the cape. So the cape ran underneath here. And it has this door, which we never use, except to bring the Christmas tree in and out. We don't know if anybody ever used it because it didn't really go anywhere when you went inside there, but it could have been set up differently. There might have been a parlor over to the left, and then maybe they used that as a formal front door. But it's more to balance out the symmetry, or the lack of symmetry, of the house. And then the third door is the door that we use every day now, and it's just sort of the main door to the house. It would have been to the carriage house, and they probably did use that to go into that part of the barn. And then the fourth door is over here, and it would have been the door to the barn where the horses were kept. Now it's a door to my gallery and to my studio. So it's sort of the main entrance for the business side of my work. So we can go back in through the 1790s door. Hello, come
Love
on
that.
in.
Love that bell.
That would be the bell to call you over from the barn when dinner's ready. So you walk in the door and there are the stairs, and these are my horses from my first pony to my most current horses. Actually, they don't fit because we didn't have enough stairs. But yeah, I thought that this space needed some cheering up, so I put all my friends on the stairs.
So this is the kitchen. And wow, Lisa, and when you get to see her murals throughout the house, really is living the art that she produces. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about what you've done, the challenges you've had, and some of the things that you most love here.
Okay, so this room is my favorite room of the house. We spend most of our time in here, unless I'm out in the studio. It's just home. And when we first saw the place, we just gravitated to this room. We didn't really care what the rest of the house had. We were just, this is so great. I think what I liked most about this room when I first saw it was the exposed ceiling and seeing the beams and just being able to see the history of this house playing out right above you. It does add some challenges because it makes it very dark in here, but I love dark houses. I always have. And I would rather be in low light, you can't see all the dirt, than bright white. When we did move here, when we first moved here, it was all white, white walls, white cabinets, open cabinets. So we redid the cabinets, and the sink was here. This is a soapstone sink, which may be original to Perkinsville, where there was a quarry, and soapstone sinks were made here. We don't know if it came from here, but so the sink was kept, and we built the cabinets around the sink. It's always a trick to try to figure out how to make appliances, new things fit in an old house. I don't like them. I don't like the stove looking so stovey, so I did the little painted backsplash on it. That's a magnet piece, same as what I have on the refrigerator.
And that's canvas you painted on as well there, correct?
That canvas glued to magnet so that it can be stuck on the metal.
Changes the whole look of the space. It could be a cupboard from that period, which
right.
is what's really nice about it.
Yeah.
What about the color choices here?
So I use a Benjamin Moore Historic Colors palette for all of my artwork. It's kind of weird because most artists would use tube acrylics and have your cad red and your burnt sienna. And I use those also to sort of perk up my historic colors, but my base of everything is 25 Benjamin Moore historic colors that are used for interiors of houses. They all play really well with each other, so you can't go wrong with them. So you see them throughout the house, and you'll see them in my artwork too.
And so what color is this here?
This is Hadley red on the trim on the windows and doors. Generally the colors that I use the most are Hadley red. This is a Richmond gold, although this wasn't painted using those colors. It's antique paint. I don't know what colors they used. I use Lenox tan on almost everything that I do. I start all of my paintings with Lenox tan as the base, and it makes it automatically look old. Some of the other colors, Hail Navy is a great blue. It's got a lot of gray in it, so it's a very dusty
blue. Is this?
So this blue I actually mixed myself. So it would have been a combination of Phillipsburg blue and some Sussex green and probably some Lenox tan thrown in there.
To give it that antique finish, right?
Yeah. This peninsula was built by Tom Clark, one of the previous owners. So we liked the wood counter, and we decided to do the same thing with these counters. Just sort of mimics the countertops to have the pine boards, and then we put in this wrought iron.
With the shelving, yeah.
For the shelving.
You have
right.
items like this that
Yeah.
are just hooks that are, have probably been here forever. That
And
are
we
part
use
of
those
this.
to dry our barn coats. When you come in and from the rain and you're soaking wet, you hang it up here right over the wood stove.
I
and
mean,
everything
functional, practical, historic, and works. Let's talk about your cloths that you're known for, and a little bit of a history on this one.
So this one was from 1830s, Medfield stencil. That's what I believe that one's called. So I did typically do reproduction stencil patterns that were used on painted floors when I was doing the floor cloths. So that's what this is. This one is from it was an inlay table design that I saw, and I liked it, and I said that would make a nice floor cloth. So I did that, had it kicking around, and said that can be in our kitchen now.
In terms of other items here, historic, can we talk a little bit about this stove?
So this wood stove is a soapstone stove. It holds the heat really well. We call it a one matcher because we can light it in November and keep it lit right through April.
Wow.
It just, once it gets hot, it stays hot. So
That's
you can
fantastic.
go away for the weekend and it's still going when you come back.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Now, we looked at this table briefly, but this is something from your family, right?
This was from my grandmother from Massachusetts, hand-painted antique desk.
It's really
I don't know
nice.
who SLH is.
Oh. And
This
The
is just a
lovely little
little
lamp.
lamp that I made lampshades one year for Christmas, and everybody got a lamp with one of my paintings.
and what about this hutch?
So this hutch came from Prince Edward Island, where my husband grew up. It's just a really simple farmhouse piece. I think it's pine. I love this piece, and this is all our pottery was what we had done for our wedding instead of china, because we
nice.
were being that way.
Sitting along with the little Christmas angel right here in the
Yeah,
corner.
sure, why not? So the fireplace
Yes.
is not a fireplace. It was just a blank wall that needed something, and I had used a fireplace for my craft shows, displaying things, fireboards and things. And I said, well, that fireplace could be here. So now we have a fireplace in the kitchen, and we have fun fooling people with it because they don't realize that it's not really there.
See, those are some of the fun things that you see out throughout your work too. The wink, wink, nod, nod.
Right.
Are there
Trompe
other?
l'oeil type
Yes, exactly. What about the carriage here? And
So I just collect folk art, basically. Anything that makes me smile. If I see it in an antique store or anywhere, I'll say, you have to come with me. I like little things that take you back in time and make you smile.
so, horseback riding, being an equestrian, runs through your bones and your blood. And you and I both share books. We grew up seeing these books and reading them. Can you chat a little bit about those?
So we were talking about the Thelwell books. Norman Thelwell was a British painter, drawer, illustrator. Did these wonderful books called the Thelwell pony books, and these ponies that were typical, just out of this world, crazy, cute ponies doing what ponies do, stomping on little kids' feet and getting dirty, and they were just magical books of just cartoon after cartoon after cartoon of these ponies. They were some of the first horses that I practiced drawing, like Thelwell. It was like, someday I'm going to be Thelwell. And I love the whimsy.
And you had your first horse, Bluebell, when you were 5.
I was 5. She used to throw me in the ditch and make me fall off. I learned how to fall off and get back on again.
Well, it's Bluebell that maybe you want to thank for these ribbons that you've gotten for dressage, right?
Well, she'd like to think so. So I have continued competing throughout my life. I've always had a horse. I've never been without a horse. I don't know what that is. I don't know what it is not to get up in the morning and go feed the horse. And the last thing I do before I go to bed is put the horse to bed. So that's a part of life that I don't want to ever live without.
Well, animals are definitely an inspiration for you. And we see that here in this beautiful
So this is a
painting.
portrait of this place. This is the old barn, and this is the house with the studio. This is Kate. This is Peppy. my daughter's horse. This is Abner and Thor. We don't have Thor anymore, but we have Abner. That's my neighbor's house down the road. This is Mount Scottney over here.
And that's a nice segue into what we're going to be chatting about, and hope that everyone stays around to the end, because we're going to talk about your connection to this area,
Right.
To the land, to your forebears, and of course to the animals wandering around your property, your love of your stewardship of this house, of a bridge that we're going to take, a covered bridge up the road, Salmond Bridge, as well as the work you're doing for equine rescue.
Yep, Dorset, yes.
And of course the artists but are definitely connected to what you do in your home.
Yep.
Anything else in this room?
I think it's just the magical feel of, I want this room to feel warm and welcoming, and usually when people come here, they just stay. We sit around this table and just talk for hours, and I think it's just because this whole room sort of wraps you in its warmth, I hope.
Okay, Lisa, let's talk about this space, or spaces, I guess.
Yeah, so this is just one big space that is serving as our dining room and our living room.
So given the age of this space, is there some things you can point out about the house structurally, and then some of the choices you've made in terms of color and favorite pieces, those kinds of things?
So when the house was a cape, originally, it came out to this corner, and there was a corner post here. And when they added on the 3-story part of the house, they removed the corner post. And so far it's stayed up for over 100 years, so I guess we're doing okay.
Yeah. Well, I love that
a
you
little questionable.
have the exposed beams here, and then, the plasterwork ceiling back there.
Yeah, so it really defines where the old house ends and the new house begins.
Right.
And as you can see, a lot of the plaster is cracking, and we should probably fix it at some point, but it's not at the top of our priority list. It's an old house. It's plastered. It's going to crack. Fireplace was put in the 70s, but it was well built. It's a Rumford fireplace, which is a really good design. It's shallow, so it throws the heat back into the room. It's a little wonky because it's not centered.
And this board is something you painted.
So that's a fireboard. I do those as well as the murals. They're sort of mini murals. So we have had quite a few antique pieces come our way, mostly from a house in Groton, Massachusetts. The grandfather clock was my great-grandmother's. This secretary was also my great-grandmother's. The table was one that was going to the dump from Bart's office, and he said, "No, thank you, I'll take that."
It's great. Look at the legs on the table. I mean, and these are charming chairs.
The chairs work here in
Ladder
the house. The previous owners just left them here.
That was kind of them. They're nice ladder-back chairs, and you have a beautiful lowboy over there.
That was made by a friend of my parents. Harvey Sargison in Groton, Massachusetts.
What about the painting over here?
So that painting is by C.W. Anderson, who is a prolific horse equine artist in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. He lived in New Hampshire, but he did a lot of work in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
He was very good friends with my mother's best friend's family, and my mother's best friend was Zoe. This is Zoe on her horse here with the Groton Hunt, Louis Alberghini, the huntsman. And Zoe's dad is one of these people here. My mother actually took the photograph. She wasn't riding that day. She did ride with the Groton Hunt, but she wasn't riding that day, and she took the photograph that C.W. Anderson used to paint the painting. There's the painting over the fireplace. This is one that I did. It is of the barn the way it was when we moved here. Now it's just this piece of the barn and this milk house. When Henry Gould was running this barn, he had over 100 cattle in this part of the barn, and he kept all the hay upstairs. This was the milk house. When we came here, there were concrete floors all the way across here, and the concrete had cracked and heaved, and it was pulling the back wall down. So we had to make the decision of pulling these wings off so that we could rebuild the main part of the barn. It was heartbreaking. I felt like we were just ruining history, but we had to do it, otherwise the barn was going to come down. So I painted this scene on a board from this wing. So this is actually a piece of the old barn. And the frame was upstairs in the barn. Tom Clark had left it.
And what about this painting over here and the bench underneath it?
So this is another C.W. Anderson. My mother collected his work. She had several pastel paintings he did and some pencil drawings and this piece. I just love the peacefulness of that one.
It is just great.
And this piece came from my step-grandmother's in Virginia, I believe. I don't know anything else about it, but it's a nice piece. We store stuff in there.
This rug is fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know the history of this rug. It's very old. That's all I know.
I love it. I love a well-worn oriental rug.
I love the colors. These are my colors.
They are your colors. Before we go into the next room, 2 items actually. This group here hanging out on the floor, the ducks.
Make way for ducklings.
They're so whimsical and so much fun. And they're looking at, it seems to me that they're looking nervously at the wood that's been stacked there and that somebody's threatened them or something.
Yeah, I don't know what their story is. Bart's parents gave those to us. They just knew how much we love wildlife, and they sent us a lot of carvings, the whale.
And this little pig over here, is that from them?
The pig in the corner was from them.
Yeah. I mean, it's true charm and whimsy and totally appropriate. I did want to ask a little bit more about this wonderful clock because it is quite something.
So this clock is a Joseph Loring clock from Sterling, Mass. It's dated 1810 on the inside. The case would have been made by a local craftsman. Joseph Loring lived in Sterling, and he ordered all the pieces. So he got the clockworks and had the carpenter make the casing, and then he put it all together and sold it under his name.
And is it working today?
It does work. It has a really loud chime, but we've gotten used to it. But we always have to remember to stop it when we have company because it keeps them awake in the guest room.
Yeah, but I mean, just the face is just incredible. And look at, the painting. The painting is fabulous. Everything. And look at the finials. I mean, and the carving.
Yeah, and it's got inlay here.
Yeah, I mean, it is just, look at this. Look at the detail here. It is just a beauty. And the last thing here, and then maybe move into the next space, I just love a bed warmer.
Came from Massachusetts again. And I've always wondered if we should use it. The guest room. This one has been pretty straightforward. It's got beautiful views out to the barn. So again, furniture came from Massachusetts. These beds are quite old, and I don't know how comfortable they are, but they're pretty. And I just wanted to keep things really simple in here, just pine furniture, and just love these throws. Those came from Groton, and they're not big enough pieces to use, so I just use them to decorate the beds. Very simple blue and white curtains.
Yes. 2 things I want to look at. This pair here of watercolors, I think they are,
I think they're watercolors. And they're French. They have little French sayings. I won't terrify you with my French accent. But so she's saying, oh, quick, a little bit of powder, as this farmer is coming to help her. So she's whipped out her powder case. And
yes.
Oh, little boy, have you seen my husband? And he says, oh, yes, madame. Is he the one blowing bubbles in the water? So the horse has dumped him in the water.
And the last thing is there's another piece of textile there. Is that also
from the same overshot.
Beautiful.
Stuff. Yeah. This is a Stubbs print. George Stubbs is one of my favorite painters of horses. Stubbs, C.W. Anderson, Norman Thelwell, there you go.
Lastly, this little, sweet little federal.
Reverse painting, yeah. It's funny, you know, I do jelly plate printing now. I don't know if you're familiar with that
I
at all,
don't, and you didn't share that with me. What's that?
I can show you out in the studio.
Okay.
It's a reverse printing process, so it's very similar to reverse paint. So this is the door that we come in all the time. This is what we call the main door. The kitchen's up here in front of us.
Just so we can be oriented, everybody here, we're back to the kitchen over here. Okay.
So a couple of interesting things in here. We have this photograph by Newell Green of our old barn, the way it was when it was attached to the milk house. This is the milk house here that still exists, and this part of the barn exists, but this part had to go away. This was taken in the 60s. He did a lot of photographs around the state of Vermont and focused in this area a lot, and these pictures made the cover of Vermont Life magazine. And then this painting has a story of its own. So before I was here, Tom Clark was the first artist that I know of that lived here. He had a studio. He made all his own paints. He was a very Renaissance man. He did this painting. I found it, actually, Bart found it upstairs. When we redid the studio out here, we had to go up in the attic and dig through some stuff, and this painting showed up. It was all crumpled up and dusty, and I took it over to Claremont, got it cleaned and redone and framed, and we now have a piece of Tom Clark in the house. So that was fun to find, and I knew it needed to have a very prominent place to remind me that this isn't my house completely, it's Tom's too.
And respecting those who came before us, and he seemed to really do a lot with this house.
He did a lot with this house. I wish I had had the chance to meet him. I didn't. He used to have these amazing parties. People tell us about the skinny dipping parties out in the backyard. And so, yeah, some people don't like to tell us that they're like, oh, Tom Clark. Like, did you come to their parties? Yeah, we did.
There's a Tom Clark in every town. Now, what about these little floral?
I believe it was my grandmother my great-grandmother on my grandfather's side, so a different grandmother than the furniture, did these as just lessons. This is what schoolgirls did.
Mm-hmm. They're perfect for this space.
I think we should all have to do little exercises like that as children.
I think so too. And get another painted door that...
Painted doors everywhere. So when you walk in the door, I want you to have the feeling of going back outside again. Let's go see where Henry Gould hung out.
Can you tell us a little bit about Henry Gould?
So Henry Gould was a farmer who moved here in the 1920s with his new wife. And he set up an amazing dairy farm. Again, as I said in the house, there were wings attaching the barn on both sides. I mean, this side it was attached to the milk house. There was a big wing out the far side. There was a silo. There was a building up on the top of the bank here. So Henry primarily raised dairy cows, and he apparently was the fastest milker in the state at one point. You know, he'd go to the state fair and off he'd go. And I believe he invented the stanchion that is currently used to keep cows' heads in the right place. So he was here from the 20s until he died in the early 70s, I believe. So he had this house, this whole farm, for over 50 years.
And he didn't have much education, right? He only had 4 years of proper schooling.
He just grew up around here and probably learned how to milk cows, and that's what he decided he was going to do.
He did more than just milking. He had lots of head of cattle, right?
Yes.
And he had grain for a while, and
he had to have had hay fields and pastures to maintain, and it was a lot of work.
He owned a lot of the different properties around here, right?
Yeah, now it's all been broken up. He acquired a lot of that property. It didn't all come as... I don't know how big the property was when he bought it, but he definitely added on to it. It went across where 131 is now. His property went on the other side to the point that when they put in the main road, it was a state highway, the state had to provide him with a access for his cows to get to the other side. So there was a culvert that he could lead the cows through. So when we moved here, this was housing pigs, and hello, we have a resident horse here. This is Catherine.
Hi, Catherine. I see all your awards. You're a beauty.
When we moved here, Bart couldn't stand up in here. I mean, he's tall, but it was like 5.5 feet. So we had to drop the floor down in order to, so there was concrete. We had to get rid of all the concrete. And then we had to shore up the structure of the barn because it was starting to fall in places.
But just look at this wall.
This stonework is pretty amazing. It needs to be redone. So this is what's called a bank barn. It was, we think it was either moved here or it was here and they picked it up and gave it a quarter turn. Because when you look upstairs, you can see where the door had been on the side, which meant that was the first floor up there, was the ground floor. And when they put it against the bank, that allowed them to have entrance on the bank level and then have animals down below. So the cows would have all been down here. I believe the horses were over at the house. And the hay would have been that whole upstairs would have been hay.
And so now we're upstairs, about to enter. Look at those doors. They are something. And I mean, the color, the weathered color is fantastic. So what do you think about that, Lisa?
So I spend hours and hours and hours trying to paint things to look like this. So a lot of people say, why don't you paint your barn? And we've talked about whether we should paint it or not. We need to Abner. We need to replace a lot of the clapboards, and that's part of the problem. Is if you replace clapboards, then they're going to be bright white or bright wood color, and then what do? So it's like, oh, I guess we paint it, and it breaks my heart to cover up all this weathered wood.
My vote would be to leave it. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Shall we head in?
Sure. So this barn, I've asked it its story over and over and over again. I sit in here on the hay bales and just try to soak it up. We do know, we've had experts come in and tell us about it, so we know some things about it. The biggest clues are that was a doorway at some point, that halfway down that side. So that's what tells us that
where we can see the window.
Where the window is.
Right.
That tells us that it was not a bank barn all of its life. That this would have been the ground floor, and it probably was for hay storage and not for animals. And then when they put it up as a bank barn, it became a house for cows. So when you look at the rafters, I don't know if you can catch this on the video, but yeah. You can see that these square rafters were extended at some point. So that was probably when they turned it into a bank barn, they raised the ceiling, and when they raised the ceiling, they had to extend the rafters. You can see the spliced on pieces. This part, which is where the bank came into effect, has the round poles. So that was a totally different structure. But we don't know when any of these things happened.
And do you use it primarily just for storage now?
Yeah, we store about 500 bales of hay in here, and then all of our junk.
Barns make great storage.
They sure do. What is it? If you have space, you will fill it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the scale of this place is just incredible.
And look at the 12 over 12 window. They didn't do that. It's like, who put that in there?
And before we go, I'd like to point out that little doggy weather vane, right? Was that on top of, he or she on top of the
No,
barn?
We brought him with us. We picked him up at some point, and then we never did anything with him, but he's kind of cute.
He's very cute. Here we are at Salmond Bridge. Can you tell us a little bit about this, Lisa?
Yeah, so this bridge was built 1870 or so, and it was in the floodplain, which was when the dam project was put in the 1950s. They had to move a whole village area of Perkinsville. Two covered bridges got moved, and this was one of them. When it got moved, it was put into an area where it was used for storage, and they stored salt in it. And now we have porcupines that eat it because it tastes salty, and they like that. In the 80s, I think it was 1986, they brought this bridge here. They found a site for it. A lot of people were like, it shouldn't be used as a storage shed, it should be a bridge. So they created this spot for it and brought it here, and it's a little town park. And we, along with our neighbors, take care of this place. We mow the park, and we come down and we paint the picnic tables each spring, and we clean up around here and trim everything back. And we have little parties in here. We have our Christmas cookie swap on the bridge. We have potluck suppers on the bridge.
Well, it's a great place to hang out. And all the while, this bridge is so happy because is it one of 4?
Oh, Weathersfield itself has 4. Yeah, there in the county there's dozens.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a Vermont Covered Bridge Society that works hard to preserve all these bridges and make sure people know about them. And people come through here all the time just to take a picture of it. You know,
Well,
keep a record of all their
you
covered
think
bridges.
Vermont, you think covered bridge. A lot of these bridges went away because of floods.
Right. Yep.
That's not the problem this summer.
No, we're so dry. There's hardly any water running under there now.
It's terrible.
People have weddings out here in the park quite often.
That's so nice. Yeah. Well, it's just a beautiful piece of history, and what a nice thing to have a stone's throw from your house.
Yeah, I ride through here almost every day with Kate. Either my warm-up or my cool-down. We come through the bridge.
Okay, so I guess we'll go back now and look at the creative spaces.
Yeah.
And then do our sit-down and hear what's next for you.
So this is sort of my main grunt room. When I was doing the floor cloths, I had this big table made so that I would do floor cloths that were this size and bigger on here. Now I use it to prep all my murals. The murals are done on canvas and then painted on there and then put up on the wall like wallpaper. So I have to prep the canvas on here. So that's why we have this big table. When we first moved here, this room was interesting. So Tom Clark lived here before we did, and there was one couple who lived here for 2 years, and their plan was to make this room into an apartment, and they'd live in the apartment and Airbnb the house. And started the apartment. They chopped this up into like 4 tiny rooms.
Oh my.
And a little thing that stuck out the front, sort of a little sunroom. And I tried to use it as a studio space, but I just didn't have enough room. Every time I turned around, I was bumping into a wall. So in 2000, we cleared all the walls out and put it back to the way Tom Clark had it, I think. So now I have a big space again. And we were talking about the Gelli plate printing. This is something I discovered just last year. This is this weirdest stuff. It's sticky. It's made out of some kind of plasticky stuff. And you paint on it, and then you remove paint, and then you make a print. And you end up with something. This was just done with some leaves and things. So you put paint down, like green paint, and then put the leaves on, and then lift the leaves off, and then the green is left where the leaves were.
My God.
And then you can do this striping and stuff or other techniques. But it's a lot of fun to play with. It's the way I get myself loosened up sometimes, because you have absolutely no control over what happens with these.
Now, you have some paintings that I've seen, one in particular of the house, and it seems like Mr. Gould is walking in, and it's got the newspaper back, and
that's a collage.
That is.
So,
can you talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, so I did a whole series of collage paintings of old barns in Weathersfield, and so I just used I'd take photographs and then print out the photographs and then cut them up and put them on the painting and then paint over the photograph and add things. And I found newspaper clippings. So, a lot of them were text from 1800s around Weathersfield, advertisements and things that would be hiding in the background. It was a great project. I had a blast doing it.
Well, they look great. And again, sort of like these, you have this feel of you're bringing in media and mediums from history.
Yep.
And it adds the depth.
And you get a lot of texture and a lot of interesting things, but I could control the colors, so I could keep it with my historical colors, and I could create a story. And that's my whole thing, is to make stories.
Everything about this life that you're living here is really tied into what you create. Evokes history and evokes that impetus to want to do that, right?
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
there are a couple things in here that I find interesting. First of all, these works of art.
Collage and painting. This is one of my favorites. I think this is my grandmother. The grandmother that I mean, I don't know that. It's just, it feels like her. Just protective of her little baby there. But I've got this is a throwback to the floor cloths, these little patterns.
Yeah.
And then this was from an old landscape painting. I collaged that out and then painted over it. I just love the feel of this one.
Now, we're getting back to some of your historic colors and what's going on here.
Those are four-leaf clovers. So four-leaf clovers find me.
Oh.
I don't find them. I'm literally just walking along and I just pick one up. So I keep them, and I used to always have one in my boot, my riding boot, when I would go to a show. So it's bad luck. I have all these rules that I've made up myself, and it's bad luck to throw away a four-leaf clover. So I put them in tape,
and they're happily here ensconced. But they look like a nice little adornment here. And so what's the color of the trim?
This is Richmond Gold. So this is the type of thing that I want to do for the Dorset fundraiser. Doors to a better future is what I'm hoping it can be, and hope to have a whole series of painted doors that could be auctioned off.
And I also, in some of my research, saw that you painted saddles.
Yeah.
And among other things, to help with other organizations.
I've done saddles that I've auctioned off.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that it's a little, what are you going to do with it? You know, it's just a decorative thing that takes up space and collects dust. Mm-hmm. But people are willing to spend some money to raise some money for a fundraiser. So the saddles have done quite well. I think I've done 4 or 5 of them as fundraisers. And I've done some boots as fundraisers also, riding boots. So the doors would be the same type of thing, that these would just be sort of standalone things. And I think you could put one up on a wall, on a big wall, or you could use it as a room divider or something. I don't know. Still trying to figure it out. So welcome to my happy place. This is where I do all of my creative work, from dreaming up ideas, stories that are going to become a mural, how to deal with a painting that isn't working right, how to decide what's going to be coming next, and what to do with what I've already done. So there's a lot of thinking that goes on up here. Actually, it's when I'm not thinking that I paint better, so try to do that.
Can you talk to us about what you're working on now?
Yeah, so this piece that's hanging up here is a finished piece of a mural that's going to Weston, Massachusetts. There are 3 walls for this mural. The other 2 bolts of canvas that are rolled up over in the corner behind the ladder there are the other 2 walls. So this wall is one continuous wall with a door to the right here, so it's the main scene. And the house that it's going in is the house that's featured there on the mural. The barn is a historic barn from Weston. The house was built in 1840. So I'm putting this mural back to the mid-1800s. It goes a little wonky a couple times. It goes back as far as 1840 and then forward to 1870 and maybe 1880. But I can do that because I get artistic license.
Yeah, absolutely. But you also do a
So-
tremendous amount of research
I do
before
a
you
ton
start.
of research, and I love it. I love to bring back the buildings that aren't there anymore and feature those, and bring back the buildings that are there but don't look like that anymore. So I have to go back and find out what they looked like at that time. And then this is the family's daughter and son. They wanted the kids in the picture, so I was like, all right, well, we'll put them to work or play or whatever they're doing. And the house is on a golf course, so you see a couple of odes to the golf course. This is the golf flag right here.
And those little secret messages are a la Rufus Porter, the itinerant
Yes.
painter, your distant relative.
Yeah, so Rufus Porter is my third cousin, 5 or 6 times removed. I can never get that straight. Actually, fairly closely related. It's my great-grandmother's cousin. So it's not that far away.
Nice. Now, when does this get installed?
The end of October, we have a date set, and we will go down and do it all in one day. I have a guy who helps me, and
Wow.
2 of us hang it and walk away. And that's the best day of the whole procedure, because you take a room that has just bare walls, and by the end of the day, it's got a whole scene playing out all the way around the room.
Welcome to the gallery. We're going to talk a little bit about connection and being drawn to a place. And it's interesting how the 2 of us actually met. We met through social media for the love of murals. We got to know each other over about a year's time, and just talking about our love of art, our love of history and historic homes and stewardship, which of course bonds people. And this fall, I just dropped my son off at Middlebury College, and I had seen that Lisa had done a mural in one of the inns. And unfortunately, I hadn't gotten my act together to get a hotel room for drop-off for freshmen, because I didn't know that was a thing we were doing until a couple weeks before. And I was scouring around, and so I couldn't find anything in Middlebury. And lo and behold, this inn pops up. And I just like the look of it, and it's called the Stronghouse Inn. And that name resonated with me, and I thought, I think I need to text Lisa, because I think she painted a mural in that house. And sure enough, she did. And we ended up staying there. But then she said, why don't you come down and see my studio and see my historic home? And so that's how we connected. Yeah. And in fact, I'm actually staying at an inn here in Weathersfield that also has some of Lisa's art. And so again, it's people are drawn to people are drawn to places. And when I think about this gallery and the work in the gallery and the house itself, I think about Lisa's artwork and her forebears, who you can tell us a little bit about your forebears, but the connection to the land, also Rufus Porter and Henry Gould,
Right.
all sort of ending up in this place.
So the Porter family is a pretty strong line that shows up in our genealogy all over the place. So primarily in New England, and Rufus Porter was from Maine and Massachusetts, born in Maine, spent most of his life in Massachusetts. And he was the itinerant muralist, went all over southern New England and put murals on people's walls. So that was fun. He's a relative. My grandfather was a porter from Groton, Massachusetts, and this house may have been owned by Asa Porter. My grandfather was Carl Asa Porter Lawrence. So it just keeps coming around and back at me. We didn't know that when we looked at the house, but then as you do the research, and it's like, holy cow, I think somebody's been here before in my family. Yeah, so Rufus Porter was wandering around painting scenes of the villages that he saw in New England. I love wandering around, looking at villages and imagining what they used to look like. I have to keep reminding myself when I see his work, he wasn't imagining it, he was painting what he was seeing, and I'm trying to figure out what he was seeing so that I can paint the same things. Yeah, and Henry Gould was living here and inventing things to make farming easier, while Rufus Porter was inventing dirigibles and guns and and creating Scientific American magazine and all these things. So it's really interesting to think that we all sort of came from this same place of, I want to say, imagining what could be, imagining what was, and just eating up the landscape and what's feeding us every day out there, all the trees and the mountains and the views. And I can't go a day without looking at my mountain. And that's why I live under it like a troll.
And, you know, I mean, there's a term called polymath. And so that's people that are adept in several different, you know, expertise in several different things, like whether you're an artist or a teacher or a scientist now, or a mathematician.
Right.
And of course, Rufus Porter was just that.
Yeah.
And he loved to teach. Part of his giving back and his stewardship, which you have in common, was sharing knowledge. And isn't that what we all should be doing? Nobody should be hoarding,
right,
or being gatekeepers, right? And wouldn't that be wonderful? Right? We share.
I always say I've made all these mistakes. I don't need for other people to make the mistakes again. So I like to teach people how not to make the mistakes.
Right. But I do love the fact that, like Rufus Porter, Lisa thinks on both sides of her brain. So she's a mathematician on one side and an artist on the other, and had a scientist for a father. So I think that really does sort of add to all of the work that you do.
Definitely. It's a curse in a lot of ways, but it's helpful in other ways.
Well, Rufus Porter's book was your Bible, right?
Right, yeah. So he did this little book called Curious Arts. It's just a little tiny little pamphlet, and he's got 3 pages in there on how to paint a mural. So it's like, as long as you know these 3 tiny pages and you're all set, you're good to go.
Sharing the wealth. Let's talk about your mural.
So this mural is actually a piece of a larger mural that I used to use to take to shows, and I would hang it in my booth. It was 20 feet long. And the other piece of it has our house and the village of Weathersfield with the center church. But I cut it off because I wanted a piece to put in here. But all of my murals are done this way. They're on canvas and then they're mounted on the wall later. This one is just hanging as an example, but it would be glued to the wall. Yeah. But this is a very typical Rufus Porter design. I did it as sort of an ode to him, to sort of practice what he had in those 3 pages in the book. I was like, okay, he's talking about the distance and where the horizon line needs to be, and how big the trees are, and as they get closer, they get much bigger, and how the light works. So it was really a study, a Rufus Porter study. So I have just kept it and have it here to remind myself of the rules of the rule book.
And you use those on the road when you teach others.
Yes.
Right,
yep.
Which is also part of her stewardship. So next, I think it'd be great for your what's next, what you've been doing, but there's more with the Dorset Equine Rescue, and talking a little bit about that.
So this summer, the Dorset Equine Rescue is a group of ladies who are working really hard to try to do the best things they can for horses that are in need. They rescued 36 horses from a farm in Townsend, Vermont. And this is the 3rd time they've seized horses from the same place. So it's just a heartbreaking story, and I know a lot of people who have been involved with that group, and I said, okay, it's time for me to step up and help them out too. I donated a painting that they sold in their auction, and it did well, and that made me think, oh, I need to do more of this. So we're in the planning stages of doing some kind of a big fundraiser next year, probably. My vision is that it will be using my painted doors, and then we'll sell the doors to help out the rescue. But it's all in the works right now. I love the idea of doing something that's completely just for these horses and not worrying about it. It frees me up artistically because I can just do it because I want these horses to be safe and happy, and that makes it a whole lot easier to paint than trying to keep a customer happy.
Next year. And then for you, outside of the stewardship, if there was one thing that you could, imagine yourself doing next, what would it be?
I don't really imagine myself doing things. I wait for things to come to me. And there's a big one coming next year, which I don't think I've told you about. The Thetford Historical Society here in Vermont has asked me to do a very large project for their place. And I'm very excited about it. It'll encompass the whole town of Thetford and the watershed area. And so that's coming. It'll be like a 6-month project. So that's going to be a good chunk of next year. And then I have a couple of other exciting mural projects that will be around either end of that 6 months, one before and one after.
So you're busy.
I'm very busy, and when you say, what do you imagine? I don't do well imagining something for myself to do. I love it when somebody says, what if you could, or could you do this? And then it's like, then the wheels start turning, and I like to put the puzzle pieces together.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you're sort of, it's being brought to you in that it's like this house was brought to you in a way.
Yeah.
Right? This place, you're connected to it, and thus it arrives.
Yeah.
And I can't see you really not living in this space and not painting, because it really, and fixing and sharing.
People ask me when I'm going to retire, and I say, why would I want to do that?
Right.
That means not doing what I love doing. So
right. And of course, her beloved, she loves all of her animals, but her beloved Kate, and helping animals and visiting with them. As you said, you like to wake up and feed Catherine, and then you feed them at night and go to bed before you go to bed. So
that, if you told me I can't do that anymore, then that's a sad day.
Right. But that's where your inspiration comes from.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, thank you so much for letting us in. And this is, to me, I think, so special, because you really do have the historic home and the maker connected. And really that connection is what helps you create.
This house feeds me creatively. Every day it gives me something, or outside I look around and it feeds me something that goes into every painting I do.
Well, we definitely look forward to seeing more from you. And of course, I will have links to VT Canvas and to her website. And we will also put up all the information if you want to get involved with the Dorset Equine Rescue. And is there anything else you'd like to add?
Probably, but I can't think of what it is.
Okay, well, we are looking forward to seeing you again on Historic Home Redux. I hope you continue to subscribe. And Lisa.
And thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hope you enjoyed your stay in
Weathersfield. I couldn't have enjoyed my time more. I hope you didn't get tired of me. All right, take care, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.